Hey everybody, it's Pete, a Turner executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. So for a lot of the newer people, you have not experienced a segment that we do, a specific series of shows called Album Fights. And this is, look, we talk about politics, we talk about authors and movies and all kinds of things, but we also love music on this show. And so sometimes we have musicians on, but other times we do these really neat things where we take two albums and pit them against each other. So in this case, for this episode, it's the Police's album, Ghost in the Machine, taking on Fall Out Boy's God Save Rock and Roll. Now, how in the heck do you have two albums fight? And this is the question. This is how we do it. If we break the albums into rounds. Now, in this case, these albums are similarly tracked, right? So 10 to 10, I think, is the number. And then we take a panel of judges, 3 judges. In this case, 3 guys who've done this before. They're kind of experienced. We love to have audience members judge fights. So for sure, hit me up, Pete at breakitdownshow.com if you'd like to do it once you hear this. And then you take round by round, song 1 versus song 1, song 2 versus song 2. It's scored on what's called the 10-point must system, very common to the boxing world. And we run this like a boxing match. Now, I usually executive produce these episodes, and my lifelong friend Mike LaPrairie loves them so much he produces and hosts them. So I kind of oversee, make sure the things are there. I participate quite a bit in the background, and sometimes I judge, sometimes I step in as host, sometimes I step in as announcer. But the bottom line is this is a powerful, and it's one of our most fun things that we do. I just love it. There's so much production value in these things. Damien does a great job of putting it together. We use little clips of music. I think you'll really enjoy it. These are longer episodes, a little over an hour, because we really get into some detailed things. But as you go through and you kind of get a feel for this, I think you're really going to enjoy these shows. They're a lot of fun. They are a lot of work. I can't tell you how much work they are. There is so much work. A lot of hours go into making these things. So I hope you guys will appreciate that. They are not on the video side yet. We are going to work on that. There's some live elements that we've got to figure out how we're going to do them reliably and repeatedly. And we're working on those things. Hopefully in the next 2 or 3 episodes, we will doing these things live. And that will, when you hear all the things that are happening in this thing, you'll understand why it's such a challenge. Anyhow, I know you're going to love it if you love music at all. I know you're going to think, how in the world can the Police and Fall Out Boy get together in the ring? Well, let me tell you, we do it, and it's a lot of fun. And there are over 50 of these things. There are so many fights. There's crazy ones. There's ones like Battle for Boston between Boston and Aerosmith. I mean, just great fights. And so I know you're going to love it. Michael Jackson takes on Prince. Prince, by the way, is the 9-round fight king, and he is the next one up in the ring. Prince is going to take on Led Zeppelin too. What? Yeah, that's going to happen. Anyhow, I know you're going to love these fights. I don't want to talk too long because Mike does all the work. So Mike LaPrairie hosts. You're going to hear him first. And then we're going to get going and have a hell of an album fight. You're going to love this, I promise. Hey, Save the Brave, savethebrave.org. Go to the donate tab. Hit a little money. Put it in the pocket. We'll put it to work, saving veterans' lives. All right, here we go. Here comes the Police versus Fall Out Boy.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
And welcome back, folks, to an album fight that's been a long time coming. I'm not going to take too long to talk about my day job, but if you want to see more about what I do, just go to gocheetah.com. I work for a company that does food distribution. Obviously, during the pandemic, we've been super busy. I've had 0 time. Now we are back again, and here is an album fight to really kick things off. Let's go to Phil for our corner call. Phil.
In the red corner, fighting out of Error Studios in Montserrat, with their reggae-infused avant-pop, new wave post-punk tones, we have the Police with their album Ghost in the Machine. And in the blue corner, fighting out of Abbey Road Studio, we have the pop rock millennial sensation in their first album fight, Fall Out Boy, with an album that debuted at #1, Save rock and roll. Let's get ready to ramble. Take it away, judges.
Yep, we are pan-generation here. We have Ghost in the Machine, the Police's fourth studio album released way back in 1981. Reached number 2 on the US Billboard, was triple platinum certified, produced several well-known singles, and got itself the 323 spot in the Rolling Stone Top 500 Greatest Albums of All Time, going up against something released this century. Yes, we have Fall Out Boy and Save Rock and Roll, their 5th studio album. They are a 4-member band, and they also have several guest vocals on this album. We'll call them out during the rounds as they come up. Save Rock and Roll debuted at number 1 on the US Billboard 200 and has also achieved triple platinum certification in the US. So these are 2 very popular albums released almost 40 years apart, 34 years apart. Before I introduce the judges, let's welcome back Richard Lackey, and he'll give us our pre-fight analysis. Richard, what do you got for us?
Hey everybody, great to be back and great to dust off the old patent pending numbers process. And this is a really interesting fight, I gotta say. We're starting off with a crazy one. We've got a classic album from the 60s, 70s, and 80s versus something a little bit more contemporary. But what does that mean as far as the numbers go? Well, there were 13 categories that we looked at for this fight. 7 critical categories and 6 popular categories. In other words, one is heavily based on awards and ratings. The other one is based on sales and popularity on the radio. So what does it look like? Well, coming out of this, the Police has 7 of those categories won. 4 of them were critical, 3 of them were popular. That's a pretty good, even disbursement. Fall Out Boy wins 3 categories, but those categories are only in the popular category, which you would expect. Typically, when you start looking at the popular categories, the newest thing is the most recent in the mind, so younger albums tend to do really well in the popular categories. Then there were 3 ties, and those 3 ties were in the critical category. So, what does this mean? Well, it can mean that this could be a 6-round to 5-round, very close, maybe split decision. But I'm going to go ahead and say that I think it's not going to quite be that close. I think the Police are going to take this one, probably a unanimous decision, and you're probably looking at least a 7-4 win, maybe even 8-3 on some cards, but I'm going to go an average of 7-4. What you will notice, both of these albums are relatively stacked at the beginning, and they kind of taper off a little bit at the end. We'll see about that. I think Fall Out Boy's finishes a little bit stronger, but I just don't know if it can hold up to the musicianship of the Police. We'll see. Prediction, Police, 7 rounds to 4. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Richard. Once again, let's see if the numbers on paper and the numbers from the judges come out to the same thing. It is definitely in 2 different eras of music. And it'll be really interesting to see how the judges come out. Now that I've talked about the judges 2 or 3 times, let's introduce our judges to you. Let's start with Todd Nemeth, a longtime judge. In fact, all 3 of the judges are returning judges who have all got several fights under their belt. Todd, what do you see in this fight?
Well, this is going to be good. I agree that it's pan-generational, which I think comes out most in the production between the 2 albums. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this, and I think it's going to be very interesting.
Awesome. Glad to have you back. Our second judge, Brian Tice, who should need no introduction. I think he may have done more album fights than me. Brian, what were your thoughts when you first saw this album fight come up?
I can't honestly claim that I ever listened to Fall Out Boy before. So coming into this fight, my only hope was that it didn't suck. And they're going up against one of my favorite bands of all time. The Police, they have such a distinctive and recognizable song. And coming in, I didn't know if I'd be able to pick Fall Out Boy out of a lineup with Good Charlotte or the Imagine Dragons. So this was an interesting fight for me.
Awesome. And to round out our judges bench, we have yet another returning champion here. Tony Alvarado, who, again, great to hear from you, Tony. It's been a while. What were your thoughts when you first saw this album fight on your email?
For sure, Mike. When I saw these two albums, that these two albums were coming together, I thought that this was going to be very, very different, because it's one of my favorite guilty pleasure bands in Fall Out Boy versus a legendary trio in the Police. So I was very interested to see what happened, and let's see how it plays out with everybody.
Cool. Well, I don't think there's anything left to do but get into the fight itself. So let's start off with a really great start to a fight. Round one has a couple of awesome songs. We have The Phoenix from Fall Out Boy versus Spirits in the Material World from the Police. Our randomizer has Todd coming up first. So, Todd, give us your lowdown on round one.
All right. So I also was not familiar with Fall Out Boy, I will admit. And so I was hoping, oh God, I hope this doesn't suck. There were a couple bands that I had to decline to participate in because I just couldn't get into the music. And I got to say, my first impression of this, I was like, oh, this sounds like radio in 2010, like very samey, very whatever. But as I got into it, I really liked this song a lot. I loved the bridge. I loved how it had like kind of a little bit of 80s hair band, Europe and Poison going on, but then also, a symphony orchestra playing in the background as well. And the lyrics are amazing. So at first, the production really put me off. And then as I listened to the song more and more, I really started to like it. I think this is a fantastic song. I love the bridge, the instrumentation. So I gave it to The Phoenix 10-9. Spirits in the Material World is a great song. It was a great single. I'm old enough to remember when it was on the radio and it was overplayed a lot. What's interesting about this song is you can listen to it as simple ska or reggae, but then also you can listen to it as like kind of polyrhythmic or even with jazz harmonies going on. So there's many, many layers to the song. There's one part where a keyboard player is playing some pattern, and then there's a synth pattern under it, and then the guitar pattern, and there's just all these different rhythms going, and it's like polyrhythmic, and it's amazing. But I wound up giving it to The Phoenix, 10-9.
Awesome. I always forgot how short Spirits in the Material World was. It's, I think, just over 3 minutes. To me, that made it suffer a little bit. I actually matched you on my scoring for this first round, but my score doesn't count. I am just a CompuBox guy. So next up, we've got Brian. And Brian, are you agreeing with Todd, or are you going to not?
A little bit of both. When I first heard The Phoenix, my first thought was that it sounded like something off of the Madden football soundtrack when I used to play back in the early 2000s. So when I read that this song was used as a trailer for a WWE video game, I felt pretty validated. Todd mentioned the symphony strings. I really felt that gave the song a good soaring quality. But the vocals, they seemed too hard to be trying to infuse testosterone into the song. I did appreciate the lyrics. I'm going to change you like a remix, then I'll raise you like a phoenix. This band's coming off a nice hiatus, and this is kind of their rebirth. And I also thought the lyrics, the war is over before it's begun, release the doves, surrender to love, offered a nice segue into Spirits in the Material World. It starts off by telling us there is no political solution to our troubled evolution, have no faith in Constitution, there is no bloody revolution. The first song, Ghost of the Machine, is a song about spirits. The song, it's got that nice synth reggae beat and a very nifty bass line describing the reality where most people seeming only to fulfill the whims of those in charge. It was a very solid first round, and it was a lot closer than I anticipated. But I did end up giving it to the Police 10-9.
All right, so we have a split so far. Tony, let's see if we've got a decision here on this first round.
For sure. I think both of these songs are great openers to the album. The bass line on Spirits is just, I thought it was very intoxicating. So I'm just sitting there listening to it, and that just draws me in right away. Like Brian said, the lyrics on The Phoenix are very catchy, and that's one of the things I like about Fall Out Boy is they have these double entendres here and there that they're very cool. I like in Fall Out Boy's song when he leads off by saying, put on your war paint. I think that's really cool. Like Brian said, it's coming back from a few years off. I gave this to Spirits in the Material World by a nod. I think that Spirits is a nice 3-minute, here we go, this is what you're going to get for the rest of the album. And they just lay it out there. I love the instrumentation on the songs. With the Police, and this one's just, I think this is a fantastic song. So nod to the Police here.
Yeah, I think the one thing in common, even though the police took this one 2-1, is everybody said a close round. I felt the same way. I thought both of these songs were a great way to kick off an album and a great way to kick off an album fight. Thus, why I chose this for our first one back when I was looking through albums too. So let's move on here to round 2. Call out to Pete Turner. 2 extremely long titles, which he would hate. From Fall Out Boy, it's My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark versus The Police, Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. And Brian, you get to lead us off here.
All right, Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. I've heard this song a million times, but it's such a fun and catchy pop song about this poor guy just pining for a girl and never quite getting up the nerve. You know, there's even 24 seconds of just E-O, E-O. And that's enough to make it brilliant, but Stuart Copeland's drumming on this track really puts it over the top. As far as My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark, Light 'Em Up. I Know What You Did Last Summer. That title reminds me of the movie I Know What You Did Last Summer. As far as my last summer, I did nothing because of the pandemic.
Yes, we all stayed indoors and watched a lot of videos.
Exactly. My wife heard the intro to this one and started singing, "Oh, Mickey, you're so fine, you're so fine." And honestly, for me, that might be the high point of the whole song. The Light 'Em Up part is fun, and I can picture an arena, jumping in mass as they belt that out. But to me, the rest of the song is just forgettable. And I give them Surrounded the Police 10-9.
10-9. Okay, so the Police seek this one out here. Tony, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite Police songs. Against one of Fall Out Boy's biggest hits. I love Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. It just seems like a Police type of love song, just with the beat and the lyrics. I thought the piano was a great add. I love everything about that song. With the Fall Out Boy song, it may be partial exhaustion because you hear it everywhere. Like between 2013 and 2015, you heard it everywhere. Anytime you go to a game, you hear it. It was on the TV all the time. And I looked at it this way too. I never change the radio when the Police song comes on, but when the Fall Out Boy song comes on, I could change it. So I gave this to the Police.
All right. So Police have 2 judges. Todd, are you going to make it unanimous?
Yeah, I'm going to make it unanimous. Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. This is an amazing song. It's basically Sting's demo, I think. And, so this is sort of the beginning of the Police becoming Sting and his side players. But it's just so good. It's hard to improve on this song. And just the contrast, like the anxiety of putting yourself out there, and then the chorus, the elation of making a connection with someone. And it's just such a great song. And it's Sting has that way of doing this where he writes these things that sound like love songs, but they're really about anxiety or surveillance or being pinned down or whatever. And I don't know how he does it, but it's really amazing. This song, there's so much stuff to do. I would recommend watching the Rick Beato video on this. His videos are amazing anyway, but he breaks down all the music theory and talks about the Lydian mode and how this song's constructed. And it's really, really interesting. There's so much going on in this song. For the other one, My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark, parentheses, Light 'Em Up. This felt a little bit too similar to the first song. It sounds like a dopey kind of action scene. Like this is the song where the semi breaks through the barn, and everybody's free. But I like the idea of songs listening to you, while you're listening to the songs. Fall Out Boy does this interesting thing, kind of breaking down the fourth wall with some of their lyrics that I really, really like. And the song started being entities out there with consciousness. But I didn't like it. I mean, even though it was dopey and it had interesting lyrics, everything, it just didn't hang together. And against this song, I made it 10-8, a knockdown for the Police.
Whoa. Our first knockdown. Wow. I'll tell you, looking at the overall score sheet, this was a unanimous round for the Police, including the CompuBox scorers. So I think everybody felt that the classicness of Every Little Thing She Does outweighs the hit single from Fall Out Boy here. I know personally Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic is far and away one of my favorite Police songs. So definitely have no disagreements here. Let's carry this on into round 3 with a couple of short titles, which Pete would love. We've got Alone Together versus Invisible Sun. And Tony, you are now first up in the rotation.
All right. Invisible Sun, not my favorite Police song when it first came out. It had to grow on me a lot, but now I really, really like it. I like the darkness in the beginning. I said that in my notes that it sounds kind of funereal at the beginning. The lyrics are very haunting, such negative overtones, but then it's like, it's Invisible Sun, hey. So I really liked it. I thought that this was a great song to come after Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic as well. Alone Together is a good song by Fall Out Boy. Not my favorite. More catchy lyrics, a good beat. It's kind of more of the same there. I gave this to the Police. Invisible Sun was just so much better.
Okay. Todd, let's hear your thoughts on round 3.
All right. I agree with everything that Tony said about this. Again, the lyrics are amazing on the Fall Out Boy stuff. I would read a book just of Fall Out Boy lyrics. They're so arch, they're so funny, there's so many plays on stuff. And it's interesting because you contrast it with Sting's sort of middlebrow NPR sensibility lyrics. And even though the music's great and the message is great, I think Fall Out Boy, with a much darker message, is just the lyrics are unbelievable. And this one too, where he says we're on the road to ruin and we started at the end. I think that's just amazing. But I could bring out like 100 examples like that from this album. However, I hate the production on this thing, and I'm going to try not to talk about this too much, but it sounds like it's mixed for an iPhone headset rather than like a car stereo, you know? And it just sounds like a stew of instruments, or they just kind of throw everything in there and they mix it up and there's just this sonic wall coming at you. And, you know, just in case you're listening to headphones that don't have that particular dynamic range or something. But I really, really like the song. However, Invisible Sun is amazing. I love songs that count, like Middle of the Road or Roadrunner or 20 Flight Rock. So that's always good when it starts off with counting. You know, it takes a little while to get going, but then it's really, really good. I had no idea it was about the Irish Troubles. I'm reading a book right now, actually, on the Civil War by Beaver called The Battle for Spain. And this song reminded me of that book, just with all the war imagery and all the kind of depressing lyrics. So I gave this one to the Police, 10-9.
All right, so we've got another lead for the Police. Brian, are you going to make it unanimous?
Yeah, I think so. 3 songs in for Fall Out Boy, and it seems to me like they made 3 attempts at creating an arena anthem. So I'm getting a pretty good feel of what they're all about. And this song, they did manage to pair Lungs, Lungs, Lungs with Young, 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 which I liked. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned I like the lyric that Todd mentioned about the road to ruin, and we're starting at the end. I also liked My Heart Is Like a Stallion. They love it more when it's broken. There's something about this song, though. The vocals, they almost make the lyrics feel forced to me. I can't quite put my finger on that. As far as Invisible Sun, yeah, it's about the hunger strikes in Belfast, fear of living in a police state. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking down the barrel of an Armalite. But, that the heat of that invisible sun that gives us the energy to hope for a better tomorrow. This song is just beautiful to me, and I gave this round to the Police 10-9.
All right, so we have another unanimous round for the Police. Things are not looking good. 3 rounds in for Fall Out Boy. Let's see if Mickey in the corner can get some air into their lungs as we head into round 4. Where Did the Party Go? Versus Hungry for You with a lovely French parentheses. J'aurai toujours faim de toi. Todd, you're up first.
Perfect. Where Did the Party Go? I think this is the first song Fall Out Boy worked on after their hiatus, where they got together sort of secretly to work on things. This describes a rather abrupt end to a relationship, I think, which is hence the, where did the party go? The lyrics, amazing. Again, the thing that made me laugh out loud was her picture was on the back of a pack of cigarettes, which I'm guessing saying she doesn't have that nice of teeth. And it's just, it compares like the end detritus of a party with the end like of a relationship. And the boys are smoking menthols because that's the only cigarettes that are left. And girls are getting back rubs, they're getting coerced into something probably. And so it's just such a great song with great lyrics. Now, Hungry for You, nobody needs a song in French. Nobody needs it. English is the language of rock, okay? The maximum acceptable amount of French in a song is in Michelle or Lady Marmalade, and that's the maximum. But the band is still rocking, and it's hard to believe Sting's only been playing saxophone for 6 months at this point. Because I think about where I was playing trumpet 6 months later, and it's not even close. So this was very easy for me, 10-9 for Fall Out Boy. Where Did the Party Go?
Fall Out Boy making a comeback. Brian, how did you feel about this round?
I thought a little bit higher of the French than Todd did. I don't speak French, but according to Google Translate, it starts out with, can't get to sleep tonight, I want you until I'm dry, but our bodies are all wet. So if I pair that with the Lady Marmalade, Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir, I think I have all the French I need. I love the horns, saxophone that Sting plays on this. And I love the reggae rhythms on this album, and I think the reggae rhythms, they pair perfectly with the French. For Where Did the Party Go, the song has a lot of elements that I appreciate. The ability to easily foot stomp along to the beat and sing along with the na-na-nas. They're right at the top of that list. The lyrics about time passing by and looking back to wild youth. Well, now we're doomed to organizing walk-in closets like tombs. That's certainly relatable. Might have been more relatable a decade ago. I think I'm even past that stage of life now. But for me, this is the closest round of the fight so far. But the raw lust of Hungry for You it beats out a song about feeling old. So I gave it a 10-9 to the Police.
So the Police are still holding your heart. Tony, which way are you going to take this round? Police or Fall Out Boy? Go for it.
I'm going to give it to the boys from Chicago. I'm giving it to Fall Out Boy. And it had to do with a little bit of what Todd said. The French lyrics were a complete distraction for me. I can't get over how great this trio sounds on this album. And then with the keyboards as well, I can't get over how musically sound this band is. They are so good. But I think it was the lyrics that did it for me. I was distracted. I didn't really like it that much. I thought if this was an instrumental, it would have been great. Where Did the Party Go is a little more pop sounding Fall Out Boy than I'm used to, like on their first couple of albums. But they make it work. Around 3 minutes in the Fall Out Boy song, it kind of sounded Duran Duran like, which I really liked. Kind of sounded like the Reflex for a couple seconds. And on the album as a whole, I really like where this song sits in the track listing. So after 3 songs where they went up against 3 great songs by the Police, I think they eked this one out here. So I gave it to Fall Out Boy.
So Fall Out Boy finally gets around, which is it's a good thing for them because it was not looking good so far. I know for me, both tracks got a little repetitive, but I guess you guys are absolutely right. The French repetition just kind of, I was looking for, is this song over yet after a while on Hungry for You, and not so much. The CompuBox was split on this one. Half went Police, half went Fall Out Boy, but it's your 3 scores that are most important. That takes us to the end of round 4. Heading into round 5, we have Just One Yesterday versus Demolition Man, and this is the first guest vocalist appearing on the Fall Out Boy, first of 4. Brian, you're up first on round 5.
Okay, Just One Yesterday. Just last round, Todd mentioned how great the lyrics to Fall Out Boy are and how they entertain him. This song for me seems like the lyrics they might have been written inside the notebook of a bored high schooler. That might be a bit harsh, but the melodramaticness of it all is just too much for me. Trading your tomorrows for just one yesterday, to me it's overused, semi-poetic trite. And the line, anything you say can and will be held against you, so only say my name. I don't know, did Zach Morris write that one? I did appreciate the bridge with Foxes and the piano. That was my favorite part of the song. Moving on to Demolition Man, Sting originally gave this song to Grace Jones, and she recorded it first. The Police decided to give it a go, thinking they could do it better. And to me, except for the lyrics, it's hard to tell it's the same song, and they're both very good. But we're not comparing the 2 songs. To me, the funny thing about this Police version is Sting saying that the song is based on his own violent fantasies. But for me, I hear the lyrics with the cartoony cliches, tied to the tracks and the train is coming, tied to the chair and the bomb is ticking, and how they play with the music when the Arsenal of Doom comes around. To me, I picture like a giant cartoon baby in this toddling stage where they're completely unaware of their spatial awareness and they're just walking around the room knocking stuff over as they try to get to things where they want to go, like a baby Stay Puft the Marshmallow Man. I don't know why, but that's how I picture it. Andy Summers' guitar work, it shines on this track. And for me, that's far more entertaining than the teenage melodrama. So I gave this one to Demolition Man, 10-9.
Okay. Tony, you're up.
Man, for all the reasons that Brian didn't like the Fall Out Boy song, I kind of liked it. I thought that Just One Yesterday, first, I think Fox's vocals are amazing as well. I completely agree with you there. I think this is one of the better songs on the album. Fall Out Boy is one of my guilty pleasures. I listen to him when I'm running. I listen to him when I'm looking for something that just to wake me up a little bit. This song is definitely a song that you wouldn't have heard on the first two albums. This is a song that when I listen to it, I hear growth in the band. I know the production that has been talked about, and it is overproduced in my opinion, but I like the lyrics. I like the sound. Demolition Man, I love that song. I love the line, "I'm a walking disaster," because that sounds like a few Friday nights I had in college. The last 2 minutes with everybody just jamming out, I love that. A little repetition, but once again, the instruments are great. But I give this to Fall Out Boy.
Okay. Tony splits it with Brian again. And we have Todd to give us the tie-breaking vote here. Todd.
So, yeah, just one yesterday. I agree that it's a cliche. If you go on Genius, I think they list on like 4 or 5 different songs that have pretty much the same lyrics and the same kind of thing. But weirdly, this is the song I wound up playing a bunch of times when I was listening to this. This is the song I kept coming back to. Fox is amazing on the bridge. I agree with the other two of you about that. It's a great contrast to the song, but actually I realized that's the song I want to hear is the bridge built into a song, and then maybe the other stuff could get put into the bridge. A lot of these songs cover really bad relationships, and I feel like they would all mark It's Complicated on Facebook, but this is probably one of the worst ones of all of them. Now, Demolition Man, it's so good to hear Andy Summers cut loose, isn't it? Just playing lead, because usually it's like weird jazzy chords, and obscure voicings and stuff. And here he is just kind of shredding, and it's so cool to hear. It's a little bit too long, as Tony pointed out, especially for a song that has one chord in it. That's a little bit long to hang on one chord. I mean, I went and looked up the tabulature for this song, and it's just A7 over and over. That's all it is that made me laugh. I remembered the Grace Jones version being a little bit better. I listened to it again. It does not hold up very well at all. My last comment on this is I really love songs that are about destructive urges. I don't know if you know See No Evil by Television. That's one of my favorite songs of all time. And you have a little bit of that in my song Knows What You Did in the Dark, has a little bit of that. I really like just good music should make you want to smash furniture and stuff. And so I think this song is great in that vein. So I gave this to the Police 10-9.
Television, there's another band that we have to line up one of these days. I am shocked, I tell you, that none of you guys brought up the cheesy Stallone Snipes movie when we had the opportunity with Demolition Man being in a round here. God, that movie was horrible and funny and horrible.
Sandra Bullock was in that one too, right?
Yeah, Sandra Bullock. I think that was one of her first starring vehicles, I think, was Demolition Man, actually. But anyways, we digress, and it's time to get back into the fight. So the police take this round, and that takes us into round 6. The Mighty Fall, featuring Big Sean, versus Too Much Information. So, Tony, you are back up top on this one. Let's hear your lowdown on round 6.
All right. The Mighty Fall is probably the song that I skipped the most when I first bought this album, just because I'm not a big fan of Big Sean. And I didn't really like how the song flowed when I first heard it. I didn't like the sampling at the beginning, but I am a sucker for lyrics, and the song grew on me as I listened to it. And the more that I listened to it, I started to appreciate the breakdown with Big Sean and like it. It has some clever lyrics in there, so it kind of goes along with the Fall Out Boy style. Too Much Information sounded to me like it was straight out of a 70s cop show. I put in my notes again that I thought this song would be great if it was just instrumental, because the lyrics were repetitive and is exhausting for me. I can only take Too Much Information so many times, even from Sting. I gave this one to Fall Out Boy again.
All right, so Fall Out Boy gets another start to a round. Todd, let's hear what you had to say about round 6.
I think this was the hardest round for me to judge. I really like the song The Mighty Fall. And again, we have amazing lyrics. A trip down the 12 steps to Malibu, kind of equating like walking down the beach, falling off the wagon, to living kind of a decadent life. And so just, that just shows how with one simple line, they can just be extremely evocative. And the other thing, we should have left our love in the gutter where we found it. That's good. Just a really good song about a relationship dependent on alcohol and drugs. And then I thought Big Sean was really good. And it's sounding a little bit like Eminem at the beginning, I thought. I don't know why. But anyway, I really, really like the song. It grew on me, as Tony said. Too Much Information. It's completely a jam. I will say. But yeah, very repetitive, and there's something about it that doesn't quite gel. One thing I did like, Andy Summers has like a little kind of Afro pop little riff going on, a little needly, it sound like something out of Fela Kuti, which was really cool. When I was first listening to this album in high school, I don't think I appreciated it, but there's something about it I didn't like, maybe too much that kind of world music sound or something. But I wound up, though it was close, I gave it to Fall Out Boy 10-9.
All right, so Fall Out Boy got 2 judges. Let's see what our third judge has to say. Brian, are you going to give one to Fall Out Boy finally?
Not this round, no. No. Too much information. This song was written 40 years ago. I can't imagine what the lyrics might be if they were written today. No, a global pandemic during a U.S. election cycle where everyone has a global connection and an outlet for their opinions in either their pocket or their hands at all times. Whatever information overload was like in 1981, it's grown exponentially since then. The horns in this track, I love. I think he does them to a great effect. And, all 3 members are doing what they do best. The guitar, the drums, and the bass are just in tune. The Mighty Fall, to me, the song starts off with like Santa's sleigh bells. And I'm thinking maybe my favorite Christmas song, Run DMC's Christmas in Hollis, is going to kick in. I did like the line, like Todd mentioned, tripping the 12 steps down to Malibu. Lines about, being connected by chemicals and finding love in the gutter. I liked most of Big Sean, but hell yeah, baby, I'm a dick, addicted to you. That stupid line just ruined the whole song for me.
Really? One line did it.
It did. I play the song and that line comes in. I'm like, oh man, I can't listen to it again. But there was a sing-along hook. There was a screaming guitar. It's a fun song, but yeah, like I said, that one line just ruined it for me. And I gave this round to too much information. 10-9.
Okay, so not unanimous, but Fall Out Boy gets a round. I know when I hear The Mighty Fall, the beginning of it, the first thing I think of is Scrooged with Bill Murray, because I think it's the same background that they play during the trailer for that movie. Na, 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 na. That whole thing. Just,
yeah.
Which for me gives The Mighty Fall actually more help. After round 6 of an 11-round fight, I'm going to do a quick halftime review here. We have one judge with it tied up until this point through 6 rounds, one judge with a 1-point differential, and one judge with a 6-point differential. So what we have right now is a 7-point lead for the police, mostly thanks to Brian, who has given every round to the police so far. But it is still anyone's game. I think with the second half of the album still happening, Fall Out Boy is going to need to work hard to win this fight, but I don't think it's a runaway for the police. Let's hear from the judges real quick on what you think Fall Out Boy needs to do to recover and win this fight. Let's start with Brian first.
Like I said, coming in, I didn't have any background knowledge of Fall Out Boy before this fight. And they haven't won any rounds, but they're definitely holding their own very well so far. They're going up against one of the best bands of all time. I don't know what they can do to get over that hump.
All right, Todd, you also didn't have a whole lot of familiarity with Fall Out Boy. What do they need to do to make up that gap and win this fight?
They need to bring out Elton John, I think. But
that's not a bad idea.
but it's really grown on me quite a bit, and there are a couple of songs I'll definitely keep on my Spotify liked, list and rotation. I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, but once I got over sort of the overproduction of it, I really there's a lot of stuff I like. Elvis Costello has nothing on these lyrics, I must say. The Police, I had that album on vinyl in high school. I played it 2 billion times, and it's interesting because that holds up. It holds up so much better than other stuff I was listening to at the time, like Pink Floyd's The Wall or Supertramp or whatever. This album just sounds super fresh and super, just interesting. There's so much going on. So it's going to be hard for Fall Out Boy to overcome a classic album like that. But I'm trying to compensate for my lack of familiarity.
Yeah, I think Ghost in the Machine gets overshadowed by Synchronicity so much. And I'm going to talk about Synchronicity a little bit later on as we get closer to the end of the album. But yeah, it's Ghost in the Machine just gets completely blown away by Synchronicity in most critics and fans' opinions. But it really is such a great album that it's tough for anybody to beat it. Now, Tony, you had familiarity with Fall Out Boy before. So, and you're the one who's got them tied right now. So what do you think has to happen in the second half for the upstarts to beat the classics?
I think they need to go back to their previous sound on their other 3 albums. I think if they are able to bring back a little less production and a little more guitar and a little more melody, I think they have it in them to pull this off. But like everybody said, they're going against just a classic album in Ghost in the Machine. So we wonder, short of giving me the second half from Under the Cork Tree, are they going to be able to pull it off?
Well, that's what the next round will tell us. We are now up to round 7. Missing You versus one of my personal favorites, Rehumanize Yourself. Todd, you are up first in round 7.
Okay, great. Tony just mentioned about the melodies, and that's another thing. I think Fall Out Boy, they don't write really beautiful melodies or, even interesting melodies. This song I felt was a little bit more melodic than the other ones. I like the retro synthesizer in the sound, but honestly, the album's getting a little bit samey at this point, and it's getting hard for me to kind of find things to latch onto, and it's overwhelming. Rehumanize Yourself, is this the one that Sting rewrote all the lyrics?
Yeah, it is.
This the one, Stuart? Yeah, that's pretty ballsy. Again, we have Sting slowly taking over the album to the point where Synchronicity is Sting doing a favor for the band, But I do like this song a lot. Andy Summers' guitar is so juicy. It's so good. It should be against the law to do that siren sound with guitars or saxophones, so it almost took off a point for that. But I wound up giving this to Rehumanize Yourself over Missing You.
All right, fair enough. Brian, I'm not sure this is the round for it where Fall Out Boy can finally pull one out, but let's hear your notes.
They're getting closer every round. Missing You, I like this one. I like the sweepy synthy open. It kind of reminds me of something that Berlin might have done. Lyrically, it has its moments. Sometimes before it gets better, the darkness gets bigger. Or the person that you take a bullet for is behind the trigger. Those might be my 2 favorite lines on the album, and they're paired together. I like the drum work. I don't care for there's a frequent noise, and I think it's synth-based, but it sounds like someone yelling, "Wah!" throughout the song. The first few times I heard it made me take my headphones off because I thought my kids were calling for me. Rehumanize Yourself. The drums and the guitar on this one, they knock out just a great dancehall beat. If it wasn't for the moaning, honking horns, it kind of reminds me of people honking their horns while driving through the Waldo Tunnel. This would just be a killer ska track for me. I think the lyrics are on point. The first verse, it's based on a real event that happened near Sting's home where some skinheads stomped a dude to death. But it's amazing to me that the phrase "rehumanize yourself" can be uttered 20 times in a row without feeling repetitive, at least to me. So I gave this round to the Police, 10-9.
Okay, Tony, take us home on this round.
So I pretty much echo everything that everybody has said. The Missing You is a song that lyrically I could see back in 2003, 2005, Fall Out Boy. All the sounds work. I like the synth, and first 2 albums that Fall Out Boy put out, it was just guitar driven, emo pop. And this is definitely a departure. I thought the sounds worked great here, but the downside for Fall Out Boy is that Rehumanize Yourself is just overwhelming. It's so good. I love the breaks between the verses. I love the ska sound. It sounds like a song that a band like Authority Zero, a thrash metal or a thrash punk band would cover. And I honestly can hear several punk bands covering it. It sounds so good. Timeless track. Definitely to the Police here.
All right, so we have another unanimous round. I would be remiss in not mentioning the Burford round, named for an often judge, Scott Burford, where albums start getting tired, and it's right around the 7th or 8th track most of the time. So I'm wondering if there's a little bit of that effect. On my own notes, I kind of thought that round 7 was Fall Out Boy's Burford round, but I also felt that round 8, the next round, was the Police's Burford round. So let's move on to round 8. Brian, you're going to start us off. It is Death Valley versus One World, Not Three.
You might be onto something there. One World, Not Three. I do love the way the horns sound in this song, and it goes without saying, Stuart Copeland's drumming is spectacular. I know in past album fights, I've penalized songs where the tone of the music doesn't match the serious nature of the lyrics. I did that for Orange Crush by REM, or Walking on a Thin Line by Huey Lewis and the News. And to me, the Caribbean influences and the reggae rock sound, they might sound like they're too upbeat for a song about becoming one world and eliminating the concept of third world countries. But the third world being legitimately represented in several Caribbean nations, it makes this sound seem completely appropriate for this song. As far as Death Valley, Tony admits that Fall Out Boy is one of his guilty pleasures. I will say that Panic at the Disco is one of mine. And to me, this song sounds a lot like Panic at the Disco. I really like the frantic pace. I think it fits well with the messed up relationship narrative and the lyrics. I really like the way the music drops out in places and you just get the vocals and the guitar during a couple verses. And you get that nice trippy break right after he sings, "And I'll Get You High." Here we go. First round for Fall Out Boy, 10-9.
Oh, I'm speechless. No, I'm not speechless. But yeah,
that's what I was going to say.
It's nice to hear. Nice to hear Brian finally caving and giving Fall Out Boy a round. Tony,
all they
you're
had to
second
do was
in
not
this.
sound like themselves.
Yeah, all they had to do was sound like Panic at the Disco. Way to go. Fall Out Boy, if you're listening, more like Panic at the Disco, less like yourselves. Okay. Tony, you're up second here.
Well, Brian, we have something in common. I also like Panic at the Disco, and I regret that I had a chance to see them both on the same bill and pass it up. Death Valley is my favorite song on this album. I think it just slams. And when I'm listening to it, I hear the drum the most. It just kind of overpowers everything else in my mind a lot of the time. I like the lyrics. I think this is a classic Fall Out Boy song. One World Not Three is a good song. I like the horns and the bass line. I really like the lyric, "One World is enough for all of us." Chorus does get repetitive again. I think this song is a little bit long. I think if it would have been about half the length, it has a little bit more power. So I gave this one to Death Valley and Fall Out Boy.
All right, Todd, are we going to get a unanimous round here for the upstarts?
Yes, this one will be unanimous as well. I think Death Valley is a metaphor for the friend zone, from what I can tell. So this song is more riff-driven, so I think it appeals to old fogies like me. And there's a little bit more contrast in the production with the guitar and the singing and stuff. So I really like this. I kind of feel like maybe it was a little bit easier for me to latch on to, but also I think it's a really, really good song. I laughed out loud again where he said, "Put the D in Dirt Baby." I laughed, gasped, laughed. I was like, oh my God, can you say that? You know, again, it's just so arch and evil. I love these lyrics. I lock right into those. One World, Not Three. This sounds like an outtake maybe from Regatta de Blanc or something that didn't make that album and they stuck it on this album. It sounds super old, but it's kind of boring and it's kind of long. So this was easy for me. Death Valley, 10-9.
And it was almost unanimous throughout the entire fight card. One dissenting vote. The aforementioned Scott Burford, why I brought him up earlier, was the only one to give this one to the Police. I know personally I felt that One World was very same with 3 other tracks on this album. And by this point, again, personally, I was a little tired of that kind of reggae infused. But it's the Police, and they do that so well that I couldn't, in good conscience, score it a knockdown. But it was getting close. Death Valley is an outstanding track, whereas One World is just same. So, round 8 in the books. Let's move on to round 9. Young Volcanoes versus Omega Man. And I gotta say, Young Volcanoes is one of the songs I really like from this album. And that's all I'm going to say until the judges have their say. Tony, you're up first.
All right. I also really like this song. I think it's a great follow-up song to Death Valley. When you listen to the album in order, this part of the album, like tracks 7, 8, 9, I think Fall Out Boy does a really good job of the song flow right there. I really like hearing Patrick Stump's vocals with acoustic guitar. They have an all-acoustic EP that came out, I think, in 2004 that is amazing. So him and an acoustic guitar just go really well together. I like the production on this song. I think it works here. But Omega Man kind of blew me right off the planet here. First off, it just starts so weird sounding. And I'm just like, what? After listening to 8 songs that sound so great and so melodic, you're giving me a bunch of noise to begin the song. But then it clears up. And I got used to that kind of cacophonous noise. I wrote down that I thought this song sounded a lot like it should be on Synchronicity instead of this album. And the chorus wasn't overplayed, even though it's kind of repetitive where he's talking about Omega Man. I didn't think it was overplayed. I thought it was good. I thought it pretty much just kicked ass for 3 straight minutes. So I gave it to Omega Man.
Well said. Todd, your thoughts on this track?
Yes. Young Volcanoes, the foxes hunt the hounds is a great line. There's a lot of reversals like that. I think it's really cool. I agree. This one sounded a little bit more sparse, so I liked it. It's funny. It seems like it was a trend to make guitars sound like ukuleles back then for some reason. Or maybe it is the ukulele. I come from a decade where they made guitars sound like bagpipes, so I really can't talk. Omega Man is such a good song. I think it's Demolition Man's second cousin, actually. And this was written by Andy Summers and vetoed by Sting to be the first single off the record, which is kind of shocking. They talk about band power plays. I agree with Tony in that it's a really interesting chord to begin everything on. And I think that same chord is used in Synchronicity a couple of places. And this is Andy Summers, right? With these close harmonies and this kind of thing. You know, I grew up with horn sections that were spread out maybe across an octave or two with a simple chord. My ears were not ready for like a cluster of like 11ths and 15ths, you know, together in a song. So it sounded really new and strange to me. And then the band just kicks in. It's amazing. So this was easy to give to Omega Man 10-9.
All right, so we got 2 for the Police. Brian.
I'm pretty much going to agree with what Todd said there. Young Volcanoes, that song, it didn't do anything for me, honestly. It just felt a little formulaic. As far as Omega Man, like Todd mentioned, it is an Andy Summers song, and Sting did try to bury it. But the musicianship that went into it is just incredible. And a couple of rounds back, I mentioned that you could repeat one line 20 times and not have it get old. And they do that again in Omega Man. And that's more than enough for me to beat this Young Volcano song. So I give it to the Police, 10-9.
Yep, and it was unanimous across all judges and all CompuBox. And I'll finish my thought on Young Volcanoes. I really do like that song a lot. It's been on my playlist or on my liked list in Spotify forever. But Omega Man is just astoundingly good. And it always pissed me off when I read that Sting tried to bury the song, because when I first got this album, it was one of the standouts that I put on mixtapes and such that we used to do back in the 80s. Remember those cassettes, mixtapes? Yeah.
That was an important part of the mating ritual.
It was. You had to make just the perfect mixtape in order to get that first date. But yeah, Police come together as a band on this one. The drumming is amazing. The bass playing is amazing. And it's a tight under 3 minutes. So yeah, Omega Man is really, for me, a standout from this album. And also, I think it was Tony that mentioned that it had kind of a synchronicity sound to it. And I think there's a little bit more of that as Ghost in the Machine kind of tails off in its last few tracks. But that's a good segue into round 10. Rat-a-tat, featuring everyone's favorite Courtney Love, versus Secret Journey from the Police. Todd, you get to lead us off here on the ultimate round 10.
Okay. Yeah, Courtney Love, you know, she sounds like the woman at the end of the bar, kind of on her third Brandy Alexander. So she like sets it down and then sets down her Winston and then goes into the booth and starts ranting about PowerPoints or something, you know. It's like, okay, we get it. You're Generation X. You don't like corporations. We all get it, you know. It's been 40 years. We get it. I think she kind of ruins this song. It's not a great song. And I don't know. I'll just say Courtney Love ruins it. Sorry. Secret Journey, what's weird is I completely forgot about this song. I played this album so many times. I completely forgot about it. And it's so good. Andy Summers' riff just kind of comes out of the fog of the synthesizer. And then I'm like, oh, hell yeah, this is on. And then the pretentious lyrics come out. That tempers my enthusiasm somewhat. And then the chorus kicks in, and it's so great that I forgive everything. And it's really good. Sting double tracks his vocals, and there's some interesting spacing between, you know, octaves and other intervals. It's so good. It feels even a little bit too short. I think this is an amazing song. It was easy, this one, Police 10-9.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Brian, what do you got for Rat-a-tat versus Secret Journey?
I'm going to start off with Secret Journey. To me, this song is so solid in so many ways. It's quintessentially the Police. I don't think any other band could pull off this song in this way. It does take a while to get started with about 50 seconds of noise, I guess, before it starts. When it does kick in, you get a song that's just so well played in every way. There's really nothing flashy to me in this one. Lyrically, it's not profound. You make a journey, you find the answers. But it's just so well played to me that there's nothing missing in this one. As far as Rat-a-tat, it's Courtney, bitch. I wonder if that's what she said right before she shot Kurt Cobain.
Oh.
I'm kidding. I don't think she shot Kurt.
She refers to herself as a suicide blonde or something. I thought that was interesting lyric.
It's a fun song. It's nice and fast. It's got a chorus made for singing along. The cadence and delivery of Courtney's first two voices, they kind of remind me of that part in Civil War by Guns N' Roses. The brief spoken word part. We practice selective annihilation of mayors and government officials. It just seems when Courtney kicks off with what thesis existed for burning down cities at such a rampant rate, it's the first thing that popped in my head. It was like, oh, she's channeling Axl here. Like I said, it's a fun song, but it ain't going to win this round. The police, they're not doing anything flashy. They're, in a real fight, they're kind of like Floyd Mayweather. They're not knocking you down, but they're just outpointing you every single round. So I gave this another technique round to the police, 10-9.
All right, Tony, got to round us out on round 10 here.
I gave it to the police as well. I thought Secret Journey was a darn near perfect song. Now I'd never listened to the album all the way through before until I listened to it last week. And this was the one song that I hadn't heard before that I liked the most. It just seemed perfect. It had all the parts that make the Police iconic. The sound I thought was just pure. The lyrics, sometimes they were okay, sometimes they were really good, but just the whole thing put together with the sound, I enjoyed the most. Rat-a-tat, I'm just not a big Courtney Love fan at all. Other than Malibu, I think that's a good song, but other than that, I can kind of do without. So yeah, I gave it to Secret Journey.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you guys more. It's as I said earlier, this really feels like a preview of Synchronicity, which is in its own right an amazing album. But Secret Journey for me was one of those songs that just always made it onto a mixtape. One of those deep tracks. Once again, we went unanimous on the entire scorecard. CompuBox also gave this one to the police. Things are not looking good for Fall Out Boy as we head into the final round here. Round 11, Save Rock and Roll featuring Elton John on guest versus Darkness from the Police. Brian, you are up first.
So, like I said at the top, I had never heard Fall Out Boy before this fight. So, in order to prepare, I listened to the album through many times, and I put it in the playlist, and I listened to the playlist through many times. And the first time I heard this song, I hated it. The first many times, I hated it. But the night when I was putting my notes together and getting ready to score this fight, I finally understood it. Originally, I didn't understand why Elton John was part of this song at all, but now it's my favorite track on the album. It's just fun, campy, cheesy song, and Elton is perfect for it. When he comes in and belts out, "Only plugged in to save rock and roll." It just makes me smile. It's just, they're having so much fun on this track. It's going against Darkness, and we got a stark contrast on this one. This song, it's dark and almost monotonous, kind of like a weird dream punctuated by occasional thunder cracks. This is Stewart's song, the lyrics too, and I get a feeling that it's reflective of his lyrics at this time. After this, the Police, they've got one album left, and when they disband, they're probably the biggest band in the world, but the strain of the fame, the strain of being the Police, the strain of putting up with Sting, it's coming out here in this song. Mm-hmm. I don't think the line, "I wish I never woke up this morning, life was easy when it was boring," I don't think it's as dark as it sounds, but when you pair it with the line before, "I didn't see any flaws till I get to my feet," he could just stay in bed all day and doesn't have to deal with trying to be perfect. Looking at the career and the joy that he's managed to have in the years since the Police have broken up, this song, it takes on so much more meaning for me. Both of these albums, they end solidly, but for me, I'm just going to give this one to the song that was just more fun to me. So I gave it to Fall Out Boy, 10-9.
Wow. After beating on Fall Out Boy for the whole fight, you give him...
I think I finally figured him out in round 11.
That's fair. Tony, you've been more fair, I'd say, to Fall Out Boy. How did the last round come out for you?
Pretty much everything that Brian said, I agree with. I thought Save Rock and Roll was the winner here. I think it's a better closer to the album than Darkness is to Ghost in the Machine. I like how when they say, "Oh no, we won't go because we don't know how to quit," It's like, yeah, we were on hiatus for 4 years, but now we're back and we're not going anywhere. And by the way, here's Elton John to validate that for you. So yeah, I agree. It's a very fun song. In fact, when I saw him in Vegas, I was really bummed that they didn't wheel Elton John out there. I was kind of waiting for that. So yeah, I gave it to Save Rock and Roll. I think Darkness is don't get me wrong, I think Darkness is a really good song. I just think, like Brian said, it's not nearly as fun in this spot.
Yeah, for sure. Todd, are you going to make it unanimous? Let Fall Out Boy go out on a good note?
Unfortunately not.
Aww.
I was really surprised that Stuart Copeland wrote this song. You know, every interview, every video I've seen of him, he basically acts manic and jumps around like a crazy person. And it's hard to believe that his one song on the album is like, you know, I wish I was dead or whatever. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I think it's about like the weariness of fame and being on the road. One thing I really like about the song is that it's kind of these off-kilter rhythms everywhere. The bass and the piano, they're contrasting each other. Even the lyrics, sort of the phrasing and the way it's sung is a little bit off-kilter. So I really like that song. Save Rock and Roll, I liked it more the more I listened to it, as Brian said. I feel like this is the song that plays like on a CW show. There's a montage of the attractive lead drinking wine and then worrying about the relationship with the other very attractive lead. So it feels like this was made for a soundtrack or something, or made for a CW show. You Are What You Love is a very nice, affirming thing to say, especially as an artistic statement that, look, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to create what I want. And I think that's been the theme for their album, is pretty much just saying, look, we're going to go in this direction and we're going to reform on our own terms. So that's really nice. When Elton John's voice kicks in, I agree. It just feels so warm and feels so familiar. It's kind of like putting Neosporin on the song. It's just really good. But I think a song that would Save Rock and Roll would probably only have 3 chords in it. But maybe that's just me. So I gave this one to Darkness and a 9.
Well, let's talk about the last round real quick. It was fairly well split, but more leaning towards Fall Out Boy on the total scorecard, with only Pete and Todd giving it to the Police. And that does take us to the end of the fight. Before we discuss the final scores, let's kick it back to Richard for his post-fight analysis. Richard, did we do the numbers like you thought we'd do the numbers or not?
Okay, great job, guys. Looking over the numbers is going to be pretty quick here because the numbers had pointed towards what looked like to be a 7-4 match. And if you average the official scorecards, it comes out to 3.67 rounds to 7.3 rounds, rounding up and down. That comes out to a 7-4 round fight. If you look at the unofficial cards, they stretched a little bit more. It was 7.5 rounds on average to 3.5 rounds, but still, that gives us pretty much the 7-4 looking fight, like the numbers had predicted. So even though it's been a little while and they're a little bit rusty, it looks like the numbers are still pretty much solid. Good fight, 2 great bands. Classic rock wins out. Back to you guys.
Once again, Richard, welcome back, and thank you for your pre- and post-fight analysis. They really do make the show. So what we've got here, guys, is a unanimous decision, and it should come as no surprise as we walked through this that it is a unanimous decision for the Police. That is right, Ghost in the Machine wins this fight. But it was close. It was very close on a couple of cards. Not every card. Todd gave it to the Police by 4 points. Tony just by 1 point. And Brian, of course, no surprise as we went through this, 7-point win for the Police. So we're talking about a total of 12 points. 319 Police, 307 Fall Out Boy. And if you add in the 4 CompuBox scorers, including me, we ended up with a 745 to 717 score. It did go even CompuBox unanimous, but I was right there with Tony with a 1-point win for the Police. So Brian, since you were the most lopsided, I'll let you go first. What did you take out of this from both bands, both albums?
You know, ultimately it came down the way I thought it would ultimately in the scoring, but I think the fight overall was a lot closer than my scorecard reflects. There was just a couple rounds where the Police were just that much better in that particular round. that really made it more lopsided than it could have been to me.
For sure. Todd, what about you? New appreciation for this new band?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was, much closer. I think about the first time I listened to the first part of the Phoenix, I was like, oh God, this sounds like that emo punk pop shit that was on the radio everywhere. But there's so much depth to it, and it's so great. And again, the lyrics are unbelievable. I think that guy should write a book or something. It's amazing. I was trying to think of what was the theme. I even texted Pete. I'm like, what the hell's the theme for this fight? He wasn't sure. But, I was thinking about it. These are two bands that, one, both consciously were moving into a pop sensibility, right? And kind of moving away from the old stuff that people wanted to hear. And the other thing is, both bands had enough time to record what they want and sort of execute on the vision that they had. So, and I think it shows. And these are two really, really strong albums. And I really liked pretty much all of the songs, except for a couple on both of the albums. And you can see when a band's allowed to execute on their vision, given enough time and space, they can make really some incredible things.
Yeah, no, you pretty much hit on the theme when I was picking albums. They both had similar sales levels, both triple platinum. They were both kind of on the heels of both of the bands making their big breakthroughs and then taking a little time off to really settle in and figure out what they wanted to record next. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head. There were some similarities, but I also wanted to bridge the gap and not just go 80s versus 80s again, which we've kind of done to death. I think that part of the fun of this show is to span generations sometimes and give some new music a chance to perform against the oldies. Finally, over to Tony. I'll let you get the last word in here. You scored it closer than the other two judges. Did you learn anything new about either of these albums, either of these bands?
So I learned that I mentioned before, this was the first time that I actually listened to the entire Ghost in the Machine album. And man, my appreciation for the Police went up tenfold because of all of the songs that you don't hear on radio or playlists. The middle of the album was good. The end of the album was good. I appreciate it. And I started to fall in love more with the sound. Like I played it with my noise blocking headphones and was just sitting here in my office listening to it. I was pretty floored. I had to listen to some songs a couple of times just to go, did I really hear how good that is? I just want to make sure. For Fall Out Boy, Todd made a great point. Like when a band is allowed to execute, you see the results. And this is their comeback album, and you definitely see that it's a different sound than the first albums. Sometimes it plays, sometimes it gets a little exhausting. And then when you see that they've gone further into more production on their albums, it's like, can you go back to 2003, 2005? At least for me anyway. I learned a lot more about the Police when I was listening than I did about Fall Out Boy, but I still appreciated it tracking both of these albums.
Well, I'll tell you, I discovered Fall Out Boy thanks to my kids, who are both now college age. And I always let them pick some music when we're going on car trips. And they were playing this for a while when it first came out, and it just really struck a chord with me, pun intended. I like this album, and I really like American Beauty, American Psycho, which was, I think, a couple albums later, which has the single Uma Thurman, which is also a really kickin' song. So I would recommend for those of you who aren't that familiar with Fall Out Boy to give that one a spin as well and check it out. I'm going to pull host privilege here, and I'm going to do the disclaimer myself, since this is our first time back in a year of album fights. We do this because we love music. We can be critical, and we might be critical of your favorite song or your favorite album or your favorite artist, but that's part of the format here. We love these albums. We love these artists. That's why we select them. But it's an album fight. We have to choose a winner, and we have to choose a loser. And so that means we have to be critical and nitpick, or as Pete often says, pick nits. I will mention before we close out that if you're a Break It Down show listener that just joined in the last year and have never heard an album fight, if you go to the breakitdownshow.com website, there's a whole tab in there with all 62 of the previous album fights we've done. Yes, for those of you who are album fight fans, this is, no shit, our 63rd album fight that we've done. And I couldn't be prouder of what we've put together so far, and I couldn't be happier to be back on the microphone. Todd, Brian, Tony, thank you again for joining me on this. And I'm really hoping that we can get on a more regular schedule here and start cranking these out at least every 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so much fun. I was so glad to get your email that we were starting this up again.
Well, I'm really hoping we can keep it going. So thank you guys. Any last words before we close out?
We've said it all.
Yeah, appreciate it. It was
See
fun.
you guys later. Thank you.